All right, hey, what's up? We're doing the recap of Stake Ranked Episode 2. This was a tournament I previewed earlier, and I had some predictions and I had some questions on some of the teams coming in because I thought it was a relatively interesting tournament. You know, some of my favorite teams were here from like Tier 2, Tier 1.5, teams I'm interested to watch, and some of the players I'm interested to watch. So I was watching this tournament with a lot of interest and intent. I didn't watch every game. I watched probably like 80% of the games. 20% I either weren't interested in or I was sleeping and I didn't bother to recap or sorry, not recap but rewatch, right? Some of the games I did rewatch before this, the games I missed out on the first time. Um, so yeah, we're just gonna go in order from last place to first place. You know how we do it. This time I wrote down some points. Probably won't pop up on screen, but I did write down some points just so I'm a bit faster and I'm actually getting to all the points I'm talking about, so I'm not waffling. So first team that got eliminated was 3D Max. This is another disappointing result. This and CAC, I think they went out last place in both those tournaments. Exorcist and Masuda had really rough tournaments individually. If we just pull that up, um, Exorcist 0.79, he had like very little impact. He felt like a liability on CT side for most of the spots he played, especially like Pit on Inferno. He felt really useless most of the time. Masuda's usually their like soldier that does everything. This guy kind of carries the team in terms of individual fragging. He feels like on T side he gets almost all the openers for this squad, right? If we go to opening attempts, 22%, he was still mostly successful too, surprisingly, and died very little. But on CT side, also still not bad, but it felt like he had a bit of a rough tournament. He went missing in some cases, and consistency wise was just not there. But Gravity actually had a decent tournament. This is the one tournament where Gravity actually was pretty okay. On CT side, still rough. I still think Gravity is pretty awful on CT side. I think on T side, when he's being set up, and you just let him off the leash and you just tell him to go run into a bomb site with a Mac 10. I think he's pretty decent at that because he has like the ability to hit some pretty nice like first bullet headshots. But I think this tournament he actually did that, right? He did pretty okay. CT side is still rough on. I still am not a huge fan of Gravity, but this tournament showed me more of Gravity. So I was okay with it. They faced off against Magic, which they lost very convincingly on Ancient. On Ancient, they got smashed by Tenzi in middle. Tenzi was just dominating them. And then on Inferno, it was a lot closer, but in the end, Magic were able to close it out in the end. And then they go to the lower bracket and they face Alliance. And in this game, I predicted that they should have won. I was like, I feel like 3D Max has the experience. They should probably have more mental resilience on Alliance. But surprisingly, Alliance actually didn't give up and they kind of stayed in this game, especially on Inferno when it was really close. On Dust 2, they lost. I didn't really watch the Dust 2, but I watched the Anubis, and the Anubis just looked like they ran out of ideas, to be honest. I think in general, a lot of the calling felt pretty lazy this tournament. It felt like they didn't have a lot of good set play ideas, and it felt kind of yeah, just lazy, right? They were trying to ram their head into a brick wall and hoping that the wall would break, but it didn't in a lot of cases. So I'm not really surprised that they end up finishing last place because I think in general this team has been going down for quite a while. They've been coming to tournaments and having disappointing result after disappointing result. So I'm not really surprised that they're probably going to be out of tier 1 tournament invite range pretty soon. If they're not already out, they're probably out. I think they signed up to XC, which is their next tournament after the major. But overall, I would expect changes on this team, changes for this team, right? Like Netu for Exorcist or Netu for Gravity. I don't know who you would bring him in for. I don't know if Netu is even going to stay on phase because Jimmy's available, right? And in my opinion, if I'm phase and I see Jim Fat's available, I'm going to buy Jim Fat. Jim Fat's a more proven player than Netu. Netu is a bit more inconsistent, but Netu gets to play with a French team. He's still exciting prospect, still has good aim, but yeah, that's all I have to say on 3D Max. Heroic, and also another disappointing result. This squad has been very very disappointing for the expectations I had at the start of this year when they added Susp. I think Nilo actually did very well at this tournament. If we go to Nilo's stats, Nilo, I think, was their most consistent player by far, their best player at the tournament, right? I think in terms of the late round impact he was having on T side, like he was closing out rounds where openings weren't going their way. He was having just a lot of late round impact, good trades, all that. So yeah, I think Nilo, not his fault for this tournament, but talking about the other two pieces, Youngster was a liability this tournament. This was one of the roughest tournaments I think I've seen youngster play as an opper, right? He was missing a lot of important op shots. He just was missing kills on CT side. Like, he needed to do something on CT side and have impact, but this tournament he showed none of it, right? Like, even the ballsy plays he was going for before when he was like adjusting to the op role, it felt like he was going for it, but he was just missing the shots more often. And then Susp, another bad tournament. Susp was a player I was super initially I was hyped for. I was actually excited to see him in the squad because I saw him on wildcard and he was a very consistent player there, especially on CT side in terms of like how he did his anchor duties. I thought he was so consistent. He was consistently delivering multi kills in the spots he needed to. Right, like when they came to Rush's bomb side on like Nuke, for instance, he plays floor. Felt like he was good for multi kills there, but it feels like in this team he just hasn't had it which kind of sucks, right? Susp is a player I do like. I think on T side he's being used as a soldier, but he was used that way in wildcard as well. So I don't know what has happened to Susp, but it's a bit sad because I thought on wildcard he was the most consistent rifler. And at this point, I don't know if you should switch him for Adam B. Adam B is another player who I think plays similar positions to Susp. He's like playing a lot of the supportive positions, but I feel like he's actually a player that like if you go to here, we can actually search it up rather quick. I didn't prepare this, but we can do it. If we go to Adam B, this is his brother. His brother has been, or his twin, right? His brother has been frying on OG. He's been their best player by far. This guy does a lot of the same roles. I think he's a little more passive in terms of his like play style. He's more of a closer, more of a trade fragger, but he's really solid in that position where I think they're using Susp as more of a hard entry. So yeah, I don't know if you should swap him for Adam B. I don't know how it's gonna work role wise fit or like passivity wise. Like Adam B might just be too passive for the roles, but maybe consider it. I think also heroic are kicking themselves for not keeping Grix and making it work, even with the possible personality clashes that I've heard that he might have or personality issues he might have behind the scenes. Because I think Grix was an unbelievably talented opera. If you watched him in tier two on, I think it was Aurora or Astrum. I forget what it was. It was one of those teams. But he was an incredibly talented piece, and you didn't for whatever reason Tobiz or the players didn't get along with him, and they decided to kick him. And he goes over to Big, and look at how Big are doing. They're at I have a lot more faith in Big than this heroic squad right now. Especially at the major, just given like how they've been performing, right? And especially with Youngster just not being an opper, like Alcarin with all the visa issues. I know I've heard it's apparently their fault that they messed up Alcarin's visa issues or visa. So yeah, this heroic squad has been struggling for a while. And then also, I'm just gonna say it. I don't think it was Krizen's fault this tournament. I think Krizen actually called okay. I think a lot of the pieces were just not delivering the kills they needed to in the positions. I think Krizen, for the most part, actually had some decent calls. Uh, I don't think they were all bad. I think Krizen individually was okay at this tournament. Um, but yeah, going out last place. I mean, like in this 9Z game, they actually had a chance, right? In this 9Z game that they played, I think they actually had a chance to take it. They had multiple chances to take it. 9Z like threw a lot of rounds, and Heroic were there to capitalize. So I feel like Heroic definitely had a chance at this tournament. I just Youngster and Sus were too much of a liability, especially Youngster. I think Sus just disappointing tournament because on T side he just wasn't delivering the numbers, right? So yeah, disappointing tournament for Heroic. 9Z, I think this is a bad result given the major is just around the corner. The fact that you decided to play this tournament when you didn't have to, you were in stage two, you could have just prepared for the major, boot camped. To be fair, some of the commentators or casters on the thing, I think it was Neokai and Scriv, commented maybe they're actually like holding back strats for the major. And that could be true because it didn't feel like the calling was really good. The calling felt pretty lazy. Um, and especially losing to Sharks. I think them losing to Sharks. I said 9C should take it easy in my recap or my preview, right? But they lost to Sharks, and some of the T side calling was just awful if you just watch some of the games, right? So they could be saving strats. I'm not sure if it's entirely true. I don't know if it's cope, but it could be actually legitimately real. Um, I think a lot of their T side calling, the problem that they had was a lot of individual plays. It didn't feel like the team was connecting. It didn't feel like Max was connecting the pieces together within the mid rounds to try and get them to play together and play cohesively. and I feel like that was a big reason why they were giving up man advantage situations and losing rounds that they shouldn't lose, right? So I think that's part of the problem. But again, that's basic stuff. That should not like it shouldn't be forced. Like you shouldn't have to actually save that for the major, right? So that's why I think it's maybe a bit of a cope. They beat Heroic barely in this Heroic series. They arguably should have maybe lost. They almost had a chance on Dust 2 until I think they won. I forget. I think they won a force buy where they like rushed the B bomb site or something. But they were getting saved off individuals. I don't think the calling was actually saving them at all. Um, so that's another thing to mention. I think Marin actually opts good at this tournament. There's the one tournament where I watched Marin op and I was like, wait, he's actually decent. He was hitting pretty consistent in terms of a lot of the shots he was hitting. He was getting a lot of important kills. So I think Marin was actually decent as an opper. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't have a lot of high hopes going for 9Z into the major, right? Or for 9Z going into the major because I think this squad they just don't have consistency. I think King T mentioned this, and a few people have mentioned this. 9Z with DGT, just in general, whenever DGT joins the South American project, it seems like they have this super high, and then they immediately go down, right? Like it's like super impressive result, and then immediately down because it's not consistent, right? Because when you watch Asana, a lot of the things that were winning them rounds, Max was calling good, yes, but it's like a burst of calling, right? It's like Max calling extremely well for a period, and the riflers are insane, and then they like are able to win games. But it doesn't feel like it's consistent with this 9Z squad. So yeah, disappointing tournament. I mean, going out almost last place is not good enough in my opinion. If you want to be the best South American squad, right? Outside of Furia, right? Alliance, I think this is an okay result. I think Alliance played pretty okay at this tournament, considering they're a tier 2 team, tier 2 Swedish team, making it up to tier 1.5 level, kind of getting some of these invites into these tournaments. So I think this is an okay result for them. Melo9, a player who was quite excited to watch at this tournament, actually had a bit of a quiet tournament. He wasn't bad, he was just he didn't live up to the expectations I hoped for him. He had some okay moments, okay series, but I think for the most part, just not a super impressive tournament for him. Era really struggled. I think he missed a lot of op shots and he had some overly ambitious peaks and ideas. Right, he was going for some like overly just some shots you shouldn't be going for. It's just too risky to go for it. But if he hits the shots, it would be fine. But he missed a lot of them, right? So that doesn't look good. Good win against 3D Max. They had a lot of mental resilience in that game. A lot of the moments looked like 3D Max had a lead or were going to like maybe close out the series in overtimes, especially on the Inferno. I think on the Inferno they actually played rather well. As particularly Twist, I think Twist actually had a lot of good individual moments on this Inferno, and I think on Anubis in general, a lot of the mid-round calling was actually pretty good. But yeah, I didn't show the stats. Sorry, I'm trying to go between notes, HLTV, and my camera to make sure it's working, so it's a lot. But yeah, Melon 9 not great. A lot of these bad stats do come from the phase game. Phase game he really underperformed. Um, and then Era was rough almost the entire tournament. Decent on Inferno. He actually had some very good important moments on Inferno, but struggled against Sharks. They lost to Sharks. Losing to Sharks is not criminal in my opinion. I think Sharks is a team that's a very chaotic style that a lot of European teams are just not ready for. Um, so I can't blame them entirely for that result. Oh my god, I just blinded myself because I had nightlight mode on and I just turned it off. Oh my god, I'm blind. Sharks. Now moving on to Sharks. Good result. I think them beating 9Z is a pretty big. I wouldn't say it's an upset, but it is kind of an upset. Again, with these South American derbies, right? These interregional competitions outside of EU, of course. I feel like a lot of these teams are a lot closer in terms of their play style, and sometimes it's just about like how well are they playing on the day. Um, I think beating Alliance also is another decent pickup. I think Alliance are a decent tier 2 team. I think they have good pieces, Alliance. Alliance is a team I actually rate. I'm excited to watch, mostly because of Melo 9 and Era, kind of. But I think they have some decent pieces. So, in my opinion, this is a good result, beating those two teams and going out, like, what, fifth place? I think fifth. We can check. Fourth place, sorry. Fourth place. I think is pretty good. So, yeah. I think Doc and Koala had decent showings against better oppositions. I think against this level of competition, this was actually rather Impressive. They didn't have the best stats. I think Doc had a 1.07. Koala had a 1.00. But I think they performed when you watch via the eye test. A lot of the matches, they actually did their job pretty well, especially Doc. I didn't watch much of Doc before this. I knew he was a player. I saw the stats, but I didn't watch a lot of his games or a lot of his POVs. But watching how he moves the mouse, it's very controlled. It's very goes through his pre-aims. He's very like cognizant of like where the fights are going to come from, and I think that he actually impressed me with how he moves his mouse. Right, I think he is a player that he does have some potential. Koala, I've known about, and he's more of this late round passive player. He's good. Still needs time though, right? He's only 21. And this tournament, I think, is a pretty big confidence boost going into the major. They took down some pretty decent teams at this tournament. So I think they might make it out of stage one due to their chaotic style catching some teams off guard, right? Alliance didn't look ready for their chaotic style. And I think some EU teams are not going to be ready for that style either in the BO1s, especially in BO1s, they can get a lot of upsets. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do make it out of stage one, but it would be like a 3-2, 3-1. They're probably going to struggle in the BO3s, and they're going to need some like help, right? For FaZe, this was an okay tournament. They finished third place. They lose to NIP. I think it was okay. I think they beat Alliance fairly convincingly. And then they lose the Magic. I've heard they should have won this Magic game. I didn't actually watch this Magic game. This is the one game I did not watch a Magic at this tournament because I watched almost every single one of their other games. But I didn't watch this one. Apparently, Masvel just Omega carried. They beat 9Z and Sharks, and then they lost to NIP. On the NIP game, in particular, this one, it did feel like Snappy just outcalled Twist. And a lot of the individuals, especially Netu, had a horror series. Netu was a liability on that Ancient. He had like 6 kills within like 20 rounds or something. It was really rough. He missed a lot of easy kills. And I think Karen individually played insane. He showcased a lot of his like good aim on that series, so that's rough. Frozen was good on CT sides at this event. I don't have the stats pulled up, but I think Frozen had a 1.4 or 1.2 or 3 in terms of CT side stats, but like a 0.99 on T side stats because he's playing opener roles now. On a lot of the maps, he's playing opener roles, positions where he has to take map control. Not all, but some. Like Dust 2, I think he plays opener position. On Ancient, he plays the opener position. He's going first sometimes and like setting up Jacob to trade, which I'm not a huge fan of. I would rather have Frozen in those late rounds and those trade opportunities. Um, he's not naturally suited for those roles, right? And I prefer to see him as more of a closer. Twist is still fragging out. Twist, I think, at this tournament was their highest rated player. He had like a 1.23 HLTV rating. It was very good. Calling wise had some hiccups, lost to some force buys they shouldn't have. Calling B pops out of spawn against like force buys, right, or like second round buys, right, where they have 5/7s and they can just gun you down. Not like Twist had this thing because Twist's calling style is very slow. It's very default. It's kind of let the round breathe and then kind of like find their let the players play and then he calls off of that. Like he finds the mid round adjustment. This tournament, some of the like I'm fine with pace changes, but I feel like the pace changes he was calling were into literally the worst timings possible. Like calling a pace change on the second round is not a good idea. Don't pace change on the second round. You want to feel out the map on the second round, right? I know I understand. Maybe if you have a perfect execute, you'll just break into the bomb site. But then you also have to rely on good utility usage and good protocols to get into the bomb sites, right? So I think that's not great. I think he's not bad at calling, but I think he needs some more development. Uh, I think his mid rounding was good though. I think his mid rounding was actually good at this tournament. Brokey is still not great. Missed some easy op shots, some sitters right at this tournament. Was better than he was with Carrion. I'll give him that. You know, not great though. Netu really rough tournament. I think he had a 0.83 HLTV rating. It was really rough, especially on that Ancient against NIP. He was just missing and whiffing a lot of kills. A lot of kills he had like he was also getting unlucky. He had some really unlucky deaths, but he also had some like really easy kills that were set up for him, and he just whiffs or like really struggled with the spray. So yeah, I still have some faith for Netu, but in my opinion, if you can get Gym Fat for him. And Jacob, great tournament. Jacob actually had a really good tournament if we go and check the stats. This tournament, he played very well, especially on T side. I actually thought on T side he was rather good. On CT side, they were enabling him to go for plays. Him and Twist, especially on Ancient, were pushing down B ramp a lot and taking fights. Um, it looks like Jacob is now allowed to play Cave on Ancient. They moved him off of B ramp and moved him to Cave, which I think is good. I think allowing him to be more proactive is good and show off his insane aim, right? Because I do think Jacob has very good aim, but I do think it's something in the mental, right? Something in the mental goes wrong in these games where it seems like he gets nervous or he gets more timid and he like doesn't go for the plays that he normally goes for. So I think it's good to see Jacob have a good tournament and finally show something that show the form he had in BetClick, right? Because I think in BetClick, I was very impressed off of his raw aim. Decision making wasn't always there, but he's not a stupid player either. Um, so yeah, good tournament. I just especially on T side, he had a lot of impact. Especially, it seems like they're giving him because of Twist's calling style being more default based and more slow paced, and kind of lets the round breathe, similar to Snacks actually on Gamer Legion. Um, it feels like it's a pace that is more comfortable for Jacob. It feels like Jacob because he gets to slow it down and take his time, he gets to show off that good aim, right? The very good aim that he has. Now moving on to Magic, and I'm just gonna say this before we even start. I'm very proud of my boys. They made a grand finals. Tenzi and Masvel, my boys. You know, I've been watching them for a while, and I'm just happy to see them do well because I mean, I think they're so talented. I think they have so much potential to go to better teams. So I'm happy to see them make this result, right? And to continue off of Astana, right? They're showing consistency. Impressive result making grand finals and taking some of the scalps they did. They took some very good scalps. If you go over it, beating 3D Max pretty convincingly. FaZe, I think, is a pretty big scalp considering FaZe had more tier 1 experience in general. Um, I think then beating Nip, like smashing Nip on both maps, like Tenzi was insane. Like he smashed them on both maps. It wasn't even close. Um, and then losing to Nip in the grand finals makes sense. It's like I think their first grand finals for any tier 2 event, like LAN event, right? Tier 1.5, tier 2 LAN event. So losing to a more experienced and tenured team in NIP makes sense, right? I think it seems they're leaning into Ancient. They were picking Ancient more at this tournament, which I'm glad they did because I think it's Tenzi's best map. I think Tenzi is so good on elbow on T side. He's so good at that position. This guy multi kills from that spot so often. Kind of reminds me of Mikaze. Not quite because I think he's more smooth. He's more calm compared to Mikaze, but he is used similar. He's used like a sledgehammer to get out of elbow, right? And he does get out of elbow a lot. And if he dies first, Masvel's right there on his hip to trade him every single time. So, yeah, I'm glad they're playing more Ancient because I think Ancient is Tenzi's best map, and I think it's the map he showcases his skills the best on. And then the calling seemed more dynamic. They weren't waiting for 40 seconds or the last 40 seconds compared to Astana. Astana, they were waiting so long to execute. This time, they were kind of getting Tenzi more involved and more of the players involved earlier in the round instead of like slow default into a execute last 40 seconds, which I hated because it's like it's so obvious what you're gonna do. You're just executing the last 40 seconds. If they save a smoke, you literally lose the round. It's not a good plan, right? And they finally avoided that. They were calling more things out of spawn. They were calling faster plays. They were getting pieces more involved, especially on a map like Ancient. I think that's perfect because it is a map where you do sometimes have to just risk it and go out elbow, right? After a first timing. So I'm glad about that. It was more varied from Astana, which is good. And then Tenzi and Masvel had great tournaments. I think Tenzi in particular, I was super impressed with, especially on Ancient. I think on Ancient he was so unbelievably. Sorry, he was so good on Ancient. On almost every Ancient game he had, he was good. So this one, 1.74. This one, 1.9, right? On this one, 1.81. Like, he was amazing on Ancient this entire tournament. So I'm super proud of him. On T side, taking a lot of the openers, right? 27%, winning almost 50%. That's insanely high, right? He also had some good clutch moments. So I'm very proud of him. Look at these. Also, pistol wise, he just improved. I always thought he was a good pistol player. He got even better at this tournament. 1.5 on both sides. Multi kill percentage is absurd. KPR is insanely high. Damage per round is like really high on CT side. So I'm super happy to have Tenzi have a good tournament and really like break out and show like, yeah, he is very clearly the star. And then Masvel had an also excellent tournament. A lot of the late round decisions he was making, a lot of the late round moments, he was so aware of what the enemies were doing and like how to read them, especially in the 1v2s and stuff like this. I remember even in the NIP game they lost in the grand finals against like he read that Stown was holding him with an op from jungle, so he jumps up Apex to try and peek him, right? But then Stown obviously repositioned before that happened, so he doesn't get the kill. But I was just impressed with the fact that he had that read on Stown, the fact that he actually read where Stown was going and what he was going to do. So I super impressed with both of them at this tournament. Hope to see them on better teams, or hopefully just see them to get hopefully see them at better tournaments, like bigger and better tournaments, right? Because they're top 20 team now in the VRS. They finally made it into the top 20. So I'm very happy for this team and for this squad who I've been watching in tier 2. And then on top of that, the other pieces were more quiet at this tournament, especially S-Fade. S-Fade, I think, fragging-wise, fell off quite a bit, which kind of makes sense. I don't think S-Fade should ever be that insane of a fragger. He does frag harder than most IGLs, but I don't think I don't think he's ever really been that insane of a fragger, right? And on top of that, Moon and AW were just, Moon and AW were kind of chaotic pieces. They're up and down. They're not super consistent like Tenzi and Masvel. So yeah, this is just me glazing Tenzi and Masvel for Magic Session. I know, what a shocker. And then for NIP, they won the tournament. Which, by the way, I just gonna say it before. Um, I called that they were gonna have a bounce back tournament. I said NIP were gonna be decent at this tournament. I did call it. Maybe I didn't actually call it, but I felt like I called it, so I'm going to count it. This is a great result. Winning a tier 1.5 tournament shows that maybe there is something to build on for this squad, because this squad a lot of people have been out on for a while. A lot of people have not been super impressed based off the results, and I understand why. But again, CAC, like their last tournament where I think they went out last place, they lost to Lin Vision. Um, I give them a bit of a pass for that tournament because, again, I think it was Casper's first time being in China. I think it was. Which, by the way, that journey is super long for most players, and most young players like doing that. Like, you're probably gonna have jet lag and you have all these problems. So I'm not gonna like blame them too much. Again, I'm making excuses for this team, but I have to. Also, on top of that, it was like Stown's second event with the team, so I also have to give them a bit of a pass, right? In the Magic series, NIP actually changed up their veto, which actually impressed me. So in the first time they picked Mirage, and they got smashed on Mirage. Like they got decimated on Mirage. So this time they picked Anubis instead of Mirage. I think it was a good decision by Existence Snappy to make that call to switch up the veto, go to a map which Magic are okay on, but not amazing on. They're good on the map, but they're not necessarily known for the map. I think Shush was way more proactive this tournament. They were giving him more space to make plays on CT and T side. If you check the opening stats, right, we can go check the opening stats. He had way higher opening attempts, 26, right? And this is on CT and T side. He was going for way more plays, and he was allowed to go for more plays. But if you check Karen's stats, right, if you go to his openings, he is doing way less of them, right? On T side, still going for a lot of openings. That's mostly because of Ancient, where he plays elbow. But on CT side, way less openings, 8%. That is extremely low, right? So I think Karen is taking a step back space-wise to give more space to Shush, which I think is good. If Shush is going to perform like this, I think Shush, he's finally back to getting impactful multi-kills, particularly on this Anubis game he played against Magic in the Grand Finals. He was insane. He dropped like 23 kills on the T side, right, or CT side. Like he was unbelievable on the CT side. Like the multi kills, the amount of impact he was finding, he was insane. T side he slowed way down, but didn't matter. Casper was able to drag them over the line towards the end. So I'm glad to see Shush have a good like a resurgence of form, right? Because I really like Shush and I really rate Shush, right? Um, I think Karen had a great tournament. He had a lot of moments that showcased his insane aim, right? Like I think Karen has very good raw aim, and he's a player who I watched on TNL, and I thought when I heard he was getting picked up by Nip, I was like, this is a great pickup, right? But he didn't really work out until about like now, right? He's shown glimpses, but he hasn't been super consistent. I think this tournament he was mostly consistent. I don't think he had too many bad series. He maybe had a few. Okay, he had more than a few, but he also had some really good series, right? Or really good maps, right? Especially in the finals, I think on this Mirage, he was very impactful here. He had a lot of good moments. And in this phase game, he had a lot of good moments as well, especially on this Ancient. He basically won them this Ancient for them. So, yeah, I'm happy to see Karen playing well. X Casper Sky is still good. I don't even need to really talk about him. Everybody knows X Casper Sky is good. Imagine if FaZe would have got him. No offense to Jacob, but Casper is more talented than him. Stown, still surprising me as an opper. I think on CT side and CT side, he's slowed it down on the op roll quite a bit. He goes for less openers now. This was like 30%. This being 24% is much lower. And on T side, he's not going for nearly as much, right? Like 9% is rather low, but he's probably trying to enable people like Shush and people like Casper on the T side to take the fights they want to take, as well as Karen, right? Because he has to make space for them. So he's playing a more supportive style, more clutch um, style of opping or closing, right? I also think he was rifling a bit more on T side. If you check the stats, the 35%, right, like is rather low. Um, in terms of the I wouldn't say rather low, but it's low compared to like most like oppers like Shiro or like Monacy who have like the op almost all the time and are enabled to have the op even though they can rifle. But I think Stown was rifling a bit more. He was having a lot of good late round impactful moments with the rifle. I think in the heroic game, I think they versed heroic. It was heroic, right? I'm not delusional. Yes, in the heroic game on Mirage, he basically won them this Mirage just based off his rifle work because he won like he had like a double quad kill with a rifle on T side. He was having so much late round impact and winning a lot of impactful clutches. So that was good to see. I'm glad to see Stown actually transition into an opper and even expressing more of his like hybrid style, which I think he can do. I think Stown can hybrid because he has a very good rifle, right? Snappy was kind of shooting at this tournament. I didn't pull up his stats, but Snappy actually, if you just watch based off the eye test and a lot of, I think even the stats, he had like a 1.00. Snappy was fragging. Like he was actually getting a lot of impactful kills, some decent multi kills, hitting some nice headshots. So I was actually impressed with that. I think Snappy calling wise, I'm biased towards Snappy's calling style. I love callers that play into the set play idea, into the like heavy execute style and the fast poppy style. I love that. So I'm always going to be biased towards Snappy style of calling, but I think it was good this tournament. I think Nip showed more mental resilience than they normally do. I think Nip um, had this problem for a while where they choked in a lot of the close series and a lot of the series where they got close or they had a massive lead and then they just threw it, they would crumble and they would give up the series. But this time they didn't crumble. Even when they threw a chance to close out a map, they just played it well. They were able to close it out even when it got close, and they were able to claw back into maps when they started off rough. I think on this Mirage game against Magic, in particular in the grand finals, I think they actually started down for a bit. I think they were like 8-4 or 4-8 on T side, right? It was a bit rough. But on CT side, they were able to claw it back and they were able to close it out, even when it got close, even when Magic started coming back into the series, right? So super impressed by that because I think that was a problem they had. Nipper now are in the top 25 of VRS, so they might be getting invited to more tier 1 tournaments, like more stuff like PGL and stuff like probably not Blast, but maybe some of the ESL ones that people turn down. And I'm happy to see this squad starting to put it all together and see all the pieces finally like play better together, right? It's not just like Casper carrying and then Stown having good moments. It's like all coming together. I'm seeing Shush have impactful multis. I'm seeing Karen play better and show off some of his aim. And Snappy individually is not a liability. So overall, I think this was a fun tournament to watch. I didn't watch all of it. I watched most of it. Um, so yeah, I don't have a lot to say. I'm excited to talk about the major and to watch the major. I've been watching a lot of CS recently. I've been watching a lot of demos, so many demos. I've been watching people like Sypho, Flowser, Note from Young Ninjas. I'm just gonna give you a hint. I'm going to make a video about Note because I've been watching so much of his demos. I've been writing down notes on Note. Haha, funny. But no, I'm really excited to talk about that player next. Probably after the major. I'm probably gonna watch the major, focus on the major, and then I'll make a video about him later. But yeah, overall, enjoyed this tournament. It was super fun to watch some more of the interesting tier 2 teams that are not at the major, right? So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Bye.